All right, welcome everyone. Another Natural Ones, the show where we try not to roll those, but they happen sometimes. joined, joined as ever by Victor Gorchev. Thanks for coming on, Vic, as always.
You're welcome. En hoi iedereen.
And we have Father Aaron, also known as the Dungeon Minister. Thank you for staying up late. Late with us and early for Vic because it's early for Vic too.
Yeah, very early.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming on. I've watched some of your videos for a while, and I've kind of always wanted to talk to you. And so here we are. I think this will be a fun conversation. So,
Oh, thank you for having me on. I've watched your stuff too. I just noticed that what I did to fix my lousy internet connection didn't apparently work. I get a little bit of metallic thing. So if I vanish suddenly, it's not because I've left in a huff. It's because my Wi-Fi connection has pooped out. But I love the opening. I love that sort of absolute 80s opening that you've got. The music and
Thank you.
The video quality shots. It's fabulous.
Yeah, everyone's like, because it's just YouTube music. It's just like the YouTube studio music. So everyone's just like, I love your song, and I've seen it in the YouTube studio, but I'm afraid to use it because it's like your song. I'm like, I can't keep you from using it. I have the right to use it just as much as you do.
Right. Yeah, my boys were making little videos years ago. They made little videos, and they asked me to upload them to YouTube. So I put them up so that Grandma, like as a unlisted video, so Grandma and Grandpa could watch them. And we picked music from the YouTube thing. Or no, it wasn't. It was from one of those free music sites, and a little tune, and then I heard it on someone else's video, and I'm like, hey, they took our song. No, it's free. Everyone can use it. It's not mine. Same thing.
Yeah, and then the intro, like I didn't really grow up in the 80s. I grew up like late 80s, mostly 90s. But like I still, the decades are not as clear cut as that. So like I still consumed so much 80s media as a kid growing up. So I don't know. Yeah. And I know like I talk about old school games, and it's just like that nostalgic thing. I think that's important.
Well, you nailed the aesthetic. For not having lived through it much, you nailed the aesthetic. Well
Thank you. I caught the tail end. I got enough of it to understand it. But yeah, I've been watching your channel for a while, and I think one of the coolest things that you do is your main game that you run is with your boys, with your sons, and I think that's just like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, and my wife.
And your wife plays. I can't get my wife to play. She won't play.
I would say she lets the boys really drive the car. She pretty much sits in the back seat and knits. Knitting, and she'll make a comment though, and it will sometimes save their bacon because they're like, "Let's go!" And she's, have you thought of this? She mostly lets them drive it though.
But yeah, that's something I want to do with my daughter when she gets older. I tried playing. She's on, like we talked about before the show. She's only 3.5. She wanted to play D&D because she's seen my friends come over on Thursday nights, and she's like, I want to do that. So I tried playing it with her one time, but she lost attention after like 30 minutes, which I think was actually pretty good for like a 3-year-old.
30 minutes? That's excellent for 3. Are you kidding? Sometimes I don't get my 8-year-old paying attention that long.
And then she lost interest, but she seems more interested in like I'll lay down I'll let her play with my terrain pieces and my gray shame that I haven't painted yet.
Right.
And she'll say she's making a dungeon, and she just lays out these dungeon tiles and makes this like mega dungeon, which is super cute. But it's something I look forward to, and I know that you're running like the old school basic box set. You're running BX and
not BX, BECMI. So BECMI. The one right after. Yeah. It is a very similar iteration. There's a few differences, but
to me, it's like it's all running the same engine. Like the rule cyclopedia is when I run that sort of iteration of the game is the one I lean on the most.
Right.
Which has its differences as well, but I don't know. To me, it's all roughly compatible.
It is. It's totally. I mean, the rule cyclopedia just put into one. It's just BECMI put into one book, but there's there are some. The one thing about the rule cyclopedia that I think is superior is that they fixed the issues with the thief, or at least some of the issues with the thief, where the tapes actually were just wrong. It's just like poor editing. They just didn't really dot all the T's and cross all the I's because it was a bit of a mess.
Yeah. That's it is what it is. I think that's kind of like why I like the way Swords and Wizardry handled Thieves, where I know people love the percentile dice, and I love the percentile dice too for their percentile skills, but it's White Box Fantastic Medieval Adventure game where they put the thief skills on a D6, and so you have like a success range of 1 to 2, which is just taking a different mechanic of like, forcing doors or surprise or anything like that and applying it to something else, which I think is neat. It works.
Yeah.
But I know some people don't like the thief skills percentile, and I don't mind them, but
it does allow more granularity, right? Because you've got 36 levels and you're going to advance this thief for 36 levels. At some point you're hitting 100.
Yeah. Oh, do we lose him?
We might have.
Uh-oh. Well, we got some chat here. Let's see. Crafty says, BECMI, so it is written, so it shall be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Rule Cyclopedia. It's a good book. I need to get like a print on demand version or something.
Yeah. Hopefully he reconnects. If you side note, if you do get the Rule Cyclopedia print on demand, don't get the hardcover. It just falls apart. Get the soft cover.
Okay. Yeah.
I
finally got my 2 ebooks in. I was glad for that. So, and they were bigger than I was expecting too. Like the Monstrous manual is like 2 inches thick.
Oh yeah, we lost him.
Yeah.
Dang. I'm sure he'll be back.
Shane Winter says he votes. Time for Vic to talk about modern necessities. Well, I am working on an updated version, so there's that.
Father Aaron failed to check against paralysis. He failed to check against bandwidth.
Kelvin Noni asks, was the word wizard being used in original D&D? Was this magic user, right?
It's just magic user. I don't think wizard was used until maybe it was used in 2nd edition, because I know in 2nd edition some terms changed, like the thief became a rogue, I think in 2nd, right?
Yeah. But then, like the sub thing is like, so that's like they kind of like almost like subclasses. So you had like the warrior, the rogue, and blah blah blah, and then thief, fighter.
We got him back. Sorry.
Hello. Sorry. I'm getting on my phone now, and I don't know what the sound is going to be like. Hang on for a moment. You're gonna look at the ceiling. Sorry.
Oh, all good.
It's a scintillating live streaming out of me. I'm sorry. It
happens.
The connection pooped out and it just wasn't coming back, and I have no idea what it is. And if anyone out there knows anything at all about computers, help. Okay.
That sometimes just happened. Happened to John last time too. So
yeah.
All right. So
I'm using Firefox now for streaming because I think it was getting mad. I think Brave was getting mad at StreamYards, so maybe it's.
That's weird because I use Brave and it's fine, but yeah, I don't know.
This is sorry. I'm trying to. Where can I get? Okay, does that sound going to be any better? Because
you sound fine to us over here.
Yeah. My cat
I'm hearing you like a robot. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to go over here. This is going to be stupid. And I'm going to find you on. For some reason. All right. So what we've got is I'm listening to you on YouTube. And I'm being filmed on my phone.
Okay.
The YouTube buffers, so there's going to be a lag between what you say and what I hear.
It'll be like a newscast then.
Yeah.
It will be like a newscast. See, that's a long lag.
Yeah.
A very long lag, and I don't know why the sound is so lousy at this thing.
Maybe I mean, if you don't want to have your camera on, you don't have to have your camera on. You can maybe turn it off, and maybe that'll help with internet stuff. I don't know, with bandwidth, because then you're only sending audio, maybe.
Well, it's unfortunately it's not a bandwidth. It's not a bandwidth problem, because when I am on with I'm on Discord playing games, I get the same thing.
Yeah.
Weird.
What I really don't understand is why my phone is sounding so wretched. I don't know.
You want to try and leave and come back in again? Maybe that'll fix it. Try it one more time.
I'm going to. I'm just go one more time. I'm going to try leaving and coming back in here on my phone, and yeah.
Let's see if that works. Sorry, folks. Technology is great when it works, and
and
a nightmare
not so great when it doesn't.
Yeah. Just another manic Monday. Yep. Internet seance. How do we sound? Do we sound?
Hey, there you are. Now you sound like normal human beings.
Awesome. Yeah. All right.
It was the weirdest thing. It was like this horrible robotic sound.
Cool.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It happens. Like I said, I was having technical issues the last 2 weeks, so it happens. Where were we? I think. I guess my question was. I'm always interested when I'm talking to because you played BECMI when you were younger. I think you said I watched one of your first videos, and you said something about how your boys were interested, so you went and dug out your old books that you had from when you were a kid, right? I think that's what happened.
I wish I could have the old books.
Oh no, you went and found them. What you did have.
Yeah. I went and I found PDF copies of them. I had, and actually we were talking about bedtimes earlier and about kids trying to extend their bedtimes, and that's what it was. My boys were trying to stay up longer. What did you play with when you were my age? What did you play with? What toys did you play with? Oh, I played with this, that, the other thing. Oh, how about when you were my age? What did you play with? Well, this, that, and the other thing. And eventually I ran out of their ages. And this was 2 years ago. So it was a 9, a 6, a 6, an 8, and an 11-year-old. And 9. No, it was 11 when we started. So anyway, we 8 and 11. Anyway, I ran out of things when I was their age. So then they asked, well, what did you play with when you were a teenager? Well, I wouldn't play with things so much. I played D&D. And they asked for what that was, and that led us to playing the game. And yeah, and I went and I found the old stuff, and I thought, okay, I know there's a new D. By then I knew there was a new version out. Or poking around at the time, I found out there was a new version, like 5th edition. What happened to 2 through 4? Last I knew, there was just D&D, right? And when I was a kid, I knew about AD&D, and later as an adult, I was invited to join a game, and I played a couple sessions, but it really wasn't. It wasn't the game. It was I just didn't jive with the group. So I thought, well, I could just get the new one. I'll learn all of the new rules and everything. I'll just dig out the old Someone's got the PDFs online somewhere, and of course they were. So I just got the old Menser, the 1983 edition of the rules, printed it up, and away we went.
That's
nice.
Cool. I mean, Vic and I both played a lot of 5e, and I mean, I'm sure at this point, being in the hobby, you've heard all of the gripes, all the praise, all the controversy that surrounds 5e. But I think that was a good choice, and I think it goes to show, because a lot of people modern day, they look at these older editions and they're too complicated, they're too backwards, they're too whatever. And obviously, like if your 6-year-old can pick it up, it's not that hard, you know.
Oh, all you need to do is look at the BECMI character sheet or a BX character sheet, and then look at the 5e character sheet. I mean, people talk about 5e as very simple, and maybe compared to 4th edition, it is. Certainly, probably compared to 3.5, it probably is. But oh gosh, compared to BECMI, I mean, it's just all these tiny little bubbles down the thing. You got to fill those in and write a number next to it. And what is this? Oh, it's much more complicated.
Yeah,
far more complicated than BECMI.
What I love about a lot of these old school games is like fitting a character on an index card.
Yep. I did that exact same thing. Mage's Musings has a game going, and I've played it a couple of times. And he told me, bring 3 characters with you the first time. Bring 3 characters. Okay, I'll roll up 3 characters. He kills characters off constantly, and then he contrives an entrance for the character to the new one, the replacement. You happen to be wandering by a dungeon and you hear cries from inside. But so I rolled up 3 characters, and I wrote them out on index cards. Because I was going to be, we went to the zoo that day, so I just had them in my pocket. Yeah.
I play B. Oh, sorry, good.
No, and then like you might need the backside if it's a spellcaster.
Yeah, it's great.
I play BX these days. I also play a lot of 5e, but my problem is that I'm working backwards, so I'm going from newer stuff to older stuff. So it's not so much like making the characters and stuff that's complex, but it's just all those little esoteric, like little rules from just how they did things in the old ways, and like I'm more used to like the newfangled ways. So working backwards can be hard sometimes. It's like, oh, how movement works is completely different, like stuff like that. So.
I don't know 5e well enough to know how movement works, but that was always something the dungeon master had to worry about. The player didn't.
Well, it's not so much different. It's a little bit more esoteric with like moving from room to room and like counting the turns and stuff like that. And 5e is just like, yeah, you move 30 feet. Okay, what do you do? So
right.
Yeah.
And you were saying in 5e, and I totally forgot about this after running 5e for so long and then switching to older editions, but that the names of like round and turn are totally different, and they're actually like they're backwards or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's confusing.
Yeah. So a round in 5th edition is like a minute, and a turn is just like the 6 seconds, and then in the older editions it does it backwards. So I also write games. So I write 5th edition stuff and I write OSR stuff. So I confuse myself all the time, and I'll be looking at like something that I'm like writing, and it's like, oh wait, no, this is supposed to be a round now. And I have to go back and like change everything.
I have to say that there's a certain sense to the turn being the shorter one, because then everyone takes their turn.
Yeah, exactly.
It's combat. Everyone takes their turn. Oh.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool though, like I said, that you dug up what you knew, what you played, because I think introducing kids to BX is like or to those older editions is not that difficult. I ran it was for adults, but on my birthday I ran a bunch of my friends through the Lost Dungeon of Tannisborg, at least like some of the first level of that, and I used the white box, the 3 little booklets. Plus, I used Greyhawk, because Greyhawk would make it closer to what we commonly envision D&D as. I contemplated being horrible and going horrible to them and going the chainmail route, but I didn't go. I didn't do that. But they caught on so quick, because I know a lot of people just what I was getting at was like a lot of people, for instance, they have a problem with like descending AC and attack matrices and things like that, and I think it goes to show it's just that that's not what they're used to. That's not what they're introduced to, because you introduced a 6-year-old, your son, to it, and he didn't obviously have any problem with it. So
no problem whatsoever. And the armor class thing. I mean, the descending armor class is because 1st class is better than 3rd class. I mean, everyone knows that when they go to buy a plane ticket, right? Oh, I'm in 1st class, so low is good in armor class, right? It's the 1st class armor. You got armor class of 1. That's fabulous. So, and it ultimately just, you end up in any system, you end up with so many modifiers to your roll anyway, that an ascending armor class, it's like you're rolling an arbitrary number eventually because of you got to plus this sword, you've got this for a strength bonus, you've got blah 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 blah.
Well, I've argued with people that like descending and ascending are roughly like you're still doing the same math.
Yeah.
So like if you're playing descending and you have an attack matrices, first of all, you should write it on your character sheet. There's a little space on your character sheet for it in most sheets where you can write your little attack matrix on it.
Yep.
The attack matrix is you're to hit AC 2, whatever that value is essentially like the ascending AC number that you're trying to hit in playing like a modern version of the game. So it's not that much different. You're still rolling a d20, adding your modifiers, and still trying to roll over a number.
Yeah, there's still also. Well, I recently played 3.5 with a local group, and there was so much math. But when I thought about it afterward, I thought, no, it's no more math than playing BECMI. If you're gonna, in a melee, you've got a strength modifier. If you have a weapon and someone has cast a spell on you, you've got 3 modifiers there anyway. It was just the modifiers were different and they didn't make sense to me, right? And so people who've learned to play 5e going to an older system, there's a what? That doesn't make any sense. But it's the same way in the other direction. And ultimately, right, you roll the dice, you tell the DM what number you got, and the DM will tell you whether or not the monster dodged or got hit.
Like you have the same modifiers and stuff. Well, the numbers are different, but you just apply them more because you have all these special attacks. You have like feats. You have like all this stuff. And it's like this is a -4, and this is a +5, and this is like this and this and that. Well, in BX, it's like I have a +1 to swinging my sword. Okay, and that's like that's it. Weird. So.
Yeah. Well, then that 3.5 game we played, there was one of the characters, and I have no idea what class it was. He kept changing his aura, and so suddenly in this round I've got a +2 to my attacks, but now my AC is back down to what it used to be. But in the next round my AC is improved, but my attacks aren't, and I was so lost. But the DM was great. I mean, he was a really, really good DM, and the story. This is the ultimately though. The game itself, like the objective, the description, the setting, the monsters, and the DM held all that together really well because he knew the system. That's what mattered. The mechanics are just, I play Gamma World on this. I play on Discord, which is what I was saying. That even when I'm on Discord, this computer, my phone never drops. I don't know now it will, but. I'm in the same corner of the house. It's not a Wi-Fi signal issue. It's something to do with that machine. But I'll play Gamma World with James Keck, and I've never seen the rule books. I don't have them. I've never seen them. I've got no idea. He gave me a character, and then when that character died, he told me what to roll and how to do it, and I roll the dice, and he tells me if I hit or not.
Yes. Yeah, as a player, you don't need much. You need to know your character, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of how like AD&D is structured, right? There's that whole like school of thought where players really maybe shouldn't know the rules too much, unless they're looking to take a role behind the screen. They really shouldn't know too much, and they'll learn along with their characters, and that's reflected in how like the AD&D rule books are laid out, where you can read the 1E player's handbook and you still don't know how to play AD&D,
right?
But in 5e, for instance, you can read the player's handbook and you pretty much know everything you need to know how to play the game. Different schools of thought. I'm not going to say one's necessarily better than the other. I like the more mysterious, way of playing. I think is essentially oftentimes more fun for the players, but I get why people are like, I want to know what's going on and what are the rules,
Yeah. Well, I like that in the red book it says if you're not going to be a dungeon master, do not read the other book. And then in the expert, which came out in BECMI, the expert came out, the dungeon masters and players in the same book, and then it had Isle of Dread in the box with it. And halfway through, there's this gray bar down the side that says Dungeon Masters section. Do not read any further if you are a player. It's kind of cool, and I've kept that with the boys, even though my eldest now he leads a Hollow World game for us. So
cool.
But I will I will give him photocopies of some monsters, but I don't want him seeing all of the stats, because they're still playing in that world. And there are still surprises coming for them. I don't want them to know that a shadow can't be turned in BECMI. It's not an undead, Now, in 5e it is, right? So they have fought shadows, and because they're familiar with 5e, because go ahead and read those books. It's not the same system. Go ahead. They're familiar with that, and so they'll be fighting a shadow and saying, "If only we had a cleric. Why don't we have a cleric in the party?" Right? And it wouldn't do you any good.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing they find out, that in world these. Why would they have any idea what a shadow is, right? I mean, it's such a mysterious, strange creature. So when the characters encounter it, they might think, "Oh, this is clearly some undead creature. If only we had a cleric. I know they're good with the undead, right?" And then along comes a cleric, like, "No, I can't touch it. I'm useless here," right? That'd be fun. That's fun.
Yeah, I like the kind of stuff too, and I mean that's partly why I don't. I'll say things like, "Oh, there's a goblin. There's a tribe of goblins there. Like you guys know what goblins are. Your characters would know what goblins are. Your characters would know what orcs are. They'd know what they look like."
Yeah.
But when it gets to like the really weird creatures that are in the DMG and whatnot, I only give a description. I don't tell them what it is. I don't. So when I was running 5e, I sometimes give the example of they ran across a gelatinous cube in this old 5e game I ran years ago. And I didn't say there's a gelatinous cube. I said down the hallway, you see like it looks like a skeleton, like just standing there in the hallway. And they start like they shot an arrow at it, and I think the rogue shot an arrow at it, and I'm like, you shoot your arrow, and it instantly slows down and stops like near the skeleton. It's just like slowly going like that. And they're like, "What the heck is going on? What is this?"
Right.
And then I'm like, the skeleton seems to be moving towards you now. It's slowly like coming towards you, but its legs aren't moving. It's sort of just looks like it's standing there going like this. And like through all these clues I gave them, they're like, they eventually figured out it was a gelatinous cube via metagaming, but it was a fun experience for them to discover something that they already knew, but because of the way I described it. And it was for me, it was definitely like a learning experience, because it was like, don't say the name of a monster. It's boring that way. You're spoiling it for the players. Like when they discover something like that, it's way more exciting.
I had the boys face a chimera, and I described the thing, this beast comes in and lands on the cliff edge above you, and you look up and you see it, outlined against the sky, an enormous central head, and first you think it's a lion, but there's this goat off one shoulder and a snake-like, is it a dragon head coming out the other side? And I said, you thought this was a myth. You thought creatures like this were myths, and so I put it in the back of their mind that like they'd heard that it was out there, as if like we saw, a chimera and thought, "Those are real? What are you kidding me? That's insane!" That same sense though, that they don't immediately, they don't have a monster guide at their fingertips, right?
Mm-hmm. And I sometimes do what Zeronix is saying here regarding players knowing the stats of all monsters. I reserve the right as a GM to alter the stats of any monster as I see fit, depending on the needs of the story. So
yeah, exactly. That's what I did with that shambling mount at one time. Instead of being instead of lightning, healing it, it was radiant damage that healed it. So they were like, "Oh, don't hit it with lightning. Hit it with cleric spells." Bad idea.
It's ultimately like, right, these things. Like, well, that's not what a shambling mound is like. They don't exist. They can be like whatever you want them to be like, you know?
Well, mine had been feeding off of like a holy well for like decades. So like all this water was coming out of this old like well, and the shambling mound had like made its nest there. So it had been feeding off of like this holy water for however long. So it was like infused with like radiant energy and stuff like that. So yeah, it changed. It mutated. So yeah.
Why not? It makes it more fun too.
Yeah.
Even actually, one of the things I like in one of the lines I like in the BECMI Dungeon Master's Guide is, have fun with invent your own monsters. I think it specifically says in golems and in living statues and giant fish. There's a number of things. Snakes, I think too. It says go ahead and add more. Put your own in. Come up with something on your own. And then in another section, it talks about trick monsters, like skeletons that shoot their fingers shoot off like rockets, which I actually used. And it encourages the DM to just make stuff up. Like, yeah, that's right. There actually are no boundaries on this. As long as like it is more like a skeleton than a box, right? As long as the spine of it stays solid and you know where that is, because that holds the game up.
Mm-hmm.
How you flesh it out, you can get really crazy about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like GMs have no problem making like magic items and stuff like that. It's the same thing.
Yeah. There's one of the things for me. For a while, I was really concerned that the magical items in the world all be traceable back to a spell. Like if they came across something, I remember when they went to Hrothgar's Eyes. It's one of the settings in my world. It's this tower on the edge of the north, and it is there to guard against. It's the Night's Watch from Game of Thrones, but they've certainly never watched Game of Thrones, so they don't know I'm stealing it. But there's a place where there's a silence that I can't remember why in the game I wanted this. There was some rationale that the people put it there. It was so that no one could break into the tower who was chaotic aligned or something, so no one else could use this tower. Has this magical chair where you can see distances, which is Ephemeral. But anyway, and I really labored over, okay, what spells would have to have been cast in order to cast silence around it, because a silence 15-foot radius, okay, but then there has to be a permanent spell cast on that, and there has to be a spell that will block out a certain alignment. And now, if I wanted that, I'd just say it's magic.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't a spell. You can't recreate it necessarily.
Yeah.
Or if you wanted to, it would require months of research and all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to be traceable back to like this spell cast by this level magic user. It's magic.
Yeah, I'm a believer that D&D, like when you look at the rules as they're presented in almost any edition, that it's essentially a post-apocalyptic game on a lot of respects. There's a lot of like previous civilizations. I didn't coin this idea. I read it on a blog somewhere.
Right.
But it's post-apocalyptic. So, those spells, those enchantments, those things could be from some previous sorcerer thousands and thousands and thousands of years prior, and no one knows his name anymore, and the spell he used is lost, and it's this ancient powerful spell. Maybe you can find it someday, who knows? But there's a lot. To me, the game world becomes more immersive when there's lots of like mysterious, unanswerable things, because we have that in our own world, and we live in a pretty mundane world most of the time, where there's lots of unexplainable things that I don't know why or how that works, but it does. So
right. Yeah. Well, that's it. And I mean, it's in Tolkien, right? They come across, this was once the watchtower of Amansul, this sense of that the Numenorians are like the Romans, they'd left this architecture that no one could replicate anymore. This culture that was unattainable now, and we live in the shadow of it. But you think about it, and you have to have that aspect, because otherwise, every tomb you go into would be like going to your town's cemetery and digging bodies up, right? Like you have to have a remove of distance and culture to make it anything other than ghoulish and horrible to go poking around in these places, because there's a point where going to an old tomb and taking things from it moves from grave robbery to Indiana Jones, and so it has to be enough of a distance to be Indiana Jones, and to be like, yeah, that's cool, not like that's someone's mother. What are you doing? I mean, these undead skeletons and zombies and stuff. That's someone's kid. That was someone's uncle that you're killing here. But it's thousands of years ago, isn't it? We dig up, archaeologists dig up bodies all the time. You think, shouldn't we just leave them in the ground? But there's a distance of time, and it just becomes somehow we just are okay with it now. And so you can go into the dungeon and you can raid the tomb and you can take all the gold because that was 5,000 years ago.
He's dead. He doesn't need it.
He's dead, and in whatever religious connotation went with this is nobody understands it anymore. And if that God exists, then he's probably with that God. He doesn't have to worry about it anymore.
Speaking of magic, speaking of magic, like what you said, I thought it was interesting because to me, magic is like something that you just kind of like throw out immediately, while an enchanted item is something that was carefully crafted over time. So yeah, they don't have to be the same. It's like me, like I get like a can of hairspray and I hold a lighter to it and I spray fire in somebody's face. Well, it's fire. Somebody else takes that same fire and like lights a forge with it and builds this and like forges a sword. It's the same element, but we're using it in completely different ways. He's like actually using it to build something. I'm just using it to scorch somebody's face off real quick. So to me, like magic is kind of like the same. So
yeah,
there's different levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I think the rules for D&D, no matter your edition, they all implement, like if you want to enchant items, there's going to be a cost of gold, and it's going to take time, and it's going to be this longer, arduous process than just memorizing a spell and then casting it. So
that very like I'm loading the gun in the morning, and I will shoot my spell bullets for the rest of the day.
I like the Vancine system. I know some people don't like it. It's fine. I think it works fine. I think it's fun.
You've got to have a game mechanic of some sort, and that's a game mechanic. Another one is the spell slots, and you know all these spells, but you only have so much magic power in you. Whatever works.
It's just an easy way to gamify it without having to do too much crunch or thinking. So.
Yeah, well, it's like rolling dice to hit or not. Right? Like, why does a fighter who has trained his or her entire life to be, the best, the absolute best, can still lose to a kobold? Like a single kobold. Why could that happen? Well, because the dice are fickle, and it has to be a game. Otherwise, it's just it's just a story.
So it's real life. There's plenty of like really badass dudes that just died from like some drunk in a bar with a knife. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, the Nuggets can always win a basketball game.
Yeah,
it can happen.
There's always that conscious chance. So yeah.
Do the Nuggets still stink? When I was watching basketball, the Nuggets stank. Do they still stink, or are they good?
I don't really watch basketball either. But
I know Dutch. I don't know your weird American sports.
This I know because I live just outside of Toronto. The Maple Leafs could win the Stanley Cup. Any year they could win. It could happen. So the best team can always lose to the worst. There's always that chance. So the dice make it concrete. They give you a way to make that real.
Well, this is evidence. This is evidence for Vic's. Vic caused a controversy a while ago with level 1 fighters or veterans. So he just made that statement, and it was like a month-long controversy. So
it's there in the book. Veteran. That's the name of the title. I always figured they had signed up to some army. They'd served in the Baron's household guard or something. They were members of the City Watch. And they've done their tour, and they've heard that there's a lot more money to be made. It's a lot riskier, because you don't have a soldier on either side, right? You don't have, but there's more money to be made if you go off adventuring. So you're a veteran of some military. That's why you can use all the weapons. That's why you can wear all the armor, right?
Yeah.
You've got those abilities. Is one of the things I think in the older systems, and BECMI in particular, it's the one I can speak to the best, that does. I think the fighter comes off feeling like the vanilla ice cream of classes, because the others all have something they bring, and they can use weapons, right? And it seems like the magic user not being able to wear armor is about the flow of magic or something, and the thief only wearing leather is because of being quiet and sneaky. So the limitations seem to have logical explanations, but then they also bring these other things. You can turn the undead, you can cast spells, you can block, that kind of stuff, whereas the fighter can just hit things. And yet they got a lot of hit points, but they don't seem to have some sort of skill. And there is a way to get around it, of course, in the in BECMI, in the master rule book.
Yeah,
there's the weapon specialization.
Yeah.
You know, and it says right in there that you can retrofit this if you want. You know, if you start a campaign, you can use these training rules. And I think it might be a neat thing to allow the fighter, in addition to being able to use all of the weapons, but, you know, so can a dwarf, so can an elf, you know, to give the fighter something like that. You can have a second attack. It's got a penalty on the roll. You're not as likely to hit because you're never going to be able to aim as well. You're coming off of one hit to do another. But to give them something, because as it is, not about strength, not about power, but just about, they don't seem to be bringing anything with that veteran status.
I think
they can use all the weapons. I don't know.
I think what a fighter is really good at, and I think what people miss, is that magic user, that thief, that cleric. Because like in BECMI, if I remember correctly, because I'm not my players, I'm running a rule cyclopedia game. My started as basic fantasy. It's really morphed into a rule cyclopedia. They started. I think level 1 cleric doesn't start with a spell.
No, they don't.
So you know. They
can turn the undead, but
what people miss with like a fighter is that fighter's he's there on the front line,
like,
protecting these other classes who are very powerful in the late game. You know, they're going to become infinitely more useful in the late game, because like a level 1 thief, like his skills are pretty terrible. He's gonna be failing more often than not. He's not a very good thief. At level 1,
no, except at climbing walls, 87% chance.
Yeah, he's
up the wall. You know what they focus on in thief school? They don't teach them how to pick locks. They're find traps, but they really spend a lot of time on climb walls. Maybe there's like an intramural wall climbing sports team, and so they really want to win. It's like going to Hogwarts and you learn broom and Quidditch really early so that you can beat Slytherins. Yeah. But no, I know what you mean. There's a sort of meat shield aspect to the fighter, that they've got the hit points to absorb some blows. They've got the strength. Generally speaking, they've got the strength to deal out a little more damage, because the damage bonus for strength, right? But I just kind of wish there was some skill thing they had, and I'm not introducing skills or feats or any of that, but I wish there was something that would give them a similar, that they could do something that other classes can't. So, for instance, for me, when it comes to weapon specialization and getting a second attack, I haven't introduced it yet. If it does get introduced, it's a fighter thing. Fighters, so none of my characters are going to have it available. But
I do like when they give them like the ability to like do like a cleave or something like that, or like a disarm, or like whatever.
Yeah.
So
a special sort of attack. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been using weapon mastery in the RC game. I used it from the start, and it was pretty fun. It did give the fighter a lot more stuff to do. Like he can. So now we're at the point where the fighter in the group, he's dual wielding. So he has like his long sword in one hand and like a short sword in the other. So he's like whipping that stuff around like crazy, beheading stuff like crazy. but he can choose to do like a death save against certain attacks coming in. Like if it would cause damage, he can do like a death save and avoid the damage. It's like a parry. He can choose to parry. He's doing his double attacks. And the thing too with weapon mastery, at least in the Rule Cyclopedia, is that as you gain levels in mastery, the weapon damage changes for the weapon. So like, I think like like a mace. There's a cleric in the group. He's wielding a mace, and his weapon mastery is with the Morning Star, the mace, which normally does like a D8, but he does 2D4. So he's gonna generally, because of the bell curve, he's gonna be causing slightly more damage than just rolling a flat D8.
Yeah. He has a minimum of 2 instead of a minimum of 1. So even if he does his worst, it's twice as good as the worst on 1D8. Yeah.
So it did add a lot to, I feel, making the party a little more heroic, in particular the fighters. So now they're going in, they're like level 5 now in my game. And they're going in and there's a troll, like kill it, and they can do it now,
right. Yeah.
So,
it's not a will this work? It's not will we succeed? There was something you point out there, like you're doing a largely Rule Cyclopedia game, and this was one of the big differences between Rule Cyclopedia and BECMI, even though it is really just BECMI put into one book with a few, as I said, editing issues cleared up, and but there's a few other differences, but there's not a lot. It is pretty much the same text, but the way BECMI was actually formatted of individual box sets, individual books, that you wouldn't even have access to those monsters yet as a DM. So it's like, we're not even putting those monsters in here. And they didn't say, there was nowhere in it did it say, don't go buy the next set until your players are high enough level. They don't tell you that, but you've got the basic set. Those are the monsters you've got in your book. Those are the ones you're going to use. And without having to have, like challenge ratings or any of that stuff, you could see right away, these guys, there are some tough monsters in here. There's some easy monsters in here. My guys at first level can handle a lot of these, right? I don't have to be super careful about what I put in, right? And if there was something that needed a magic weapon to hit or silver to hit, it has it in the description, and it says you shouldn't put this. I'm bringing up the shadow again. Don't put in a shadow unless your players they have a magic weapon. And so then you get the next book, though, like, oh, more monsters, and these monsters are tougher, right? Your characters are tougher. So I really like that about the way it was introduced, that the DM was given tools as the players would be reaching those things. So you don't even hear about building a stronghold as an idea until your characters can do it. Yeah.
Brian says the box sets are guide rails for keeping the DMs pointed in the right direction based on the party level. Yeah. Whereas in Rule Cyclopedia, or if you're playing like old school Essentials or something like that, you're rolling on like a random encounter table, and you have access to all of that, and you're in a wilderness encounter, like, oh, look at that, you ran across a green dragon,
right? And that may be more realistic because the world doesn't reserve its worst stuff for its strongest people. Sometimes the weakest people get the worst stuff, but again, it's a game. It's not real life. It's a game, and just like you have to roll dice to see if you hit the thing or not, and you only get so many spells per day, and you memorize them, and then you cast them, they're erased from your brain, which is not how memorization works. But it's a game, so it's a game mechanic. And so the idea that you're not going to run into something that you cannot either defeat or run away from or talk your way out of, right? There has to be a way for you to escape this. Otherwise,
we were talking online. Someone on the Guilded server was arguing with someone on Twitter about Elf Game, as is the case,
Arguing on Twitter? Who does that?
But they were talking about how this guy was saying, like, oh, there's a random encounter. It's a green dragon. It's right in front of the players. He has surprise, breath weapon, total TPK, you know. And so we were sitting there looking at it, and I was like, that scenario could just never happen, though. Like that scenario, because he was referencing old school centrals, and I was like, that just couldn't happen. So let's like look at the rules, and the party would have a chance to get away. Like the way the rules are written, like the surprise distance is even the minimum distance is, if I remember correctly, maybe I'm wrong if I'm misremembering, but the dragon's breath weapon for sure couldn't just reach across even the surprise distance in the wilderness. So like this idea, the dragon would have to move up through the woods and or fly up and
really
then,
quietly.
yeah. Yeah. And probably make a lot of noise, because let's be honest, a dragon moving through the forest is going to make a lot of noise.
It's 1d4
once you hear a squirrel in the woods and the squirrel's making a racket, and you think, oh, there's a bear coming, and then it's a squirrel, right? So the dragon, you'd hear him.
Yeah, and so like the encounter distance itself, like Victor said, is 2d4. You said.
So if they're not surprised, it's 46 times 10, and if one side is surprised, it's 1d4 times 10.
Yeah, right. And which I think that's close to BX and BECMI.
Yeah.
Like his scenario is impossible. So it's like, even when the players are faced with something that is very terrifying and scary, there's, in my opinion, it's rare. There's going to always be that, like you said, that bad luck.
Yeah.
That's always a distinct possibility, but they still have a chance. You know, there's
and there's also the role of the DM, right? So let's say you're going to use, if I roll a dragon up on a random encounter, I re-roll, not because it's too hard for the characters or whatever, because they fought a small dragon and beat it, but because to me dragons should be, or I want dragons to be. I'll make it that. There's not a should. It should be however you want to play your game, but I want dragons to be set pieces. I want dragons to be, to have some quest level thing about them, right? So, but if you were going to roll it and you roll up a green dragon, right, you're still the DM. And so what if the surprise dice says, what's it, 1d4 times 10? So
2d4 times 10, I think.
1d4 times 10 for
surprise. 1d4, I'm wrong.
1d4 times 10 is surprise. So, you roll a 1. He pops up 10 feet away from you. First of all, how? I guess maybe the dragon was sleeping and you walked past it and it just lifted its head. But you're still the DM. And you can first of all, you can say, it's not 10 feet. That's ridiculous. How do you get 10 feet from a dragon and not notice? It's 50 feet. It's 40 feet. Whatever.
I think it'd be
do that.
It'd be 10 yards in wilderness, because obviously it's like outdoors. It's yards.
It's yards. I was misleading, so it's yards. But it's called encounter, not combat encounter. It's called encounter. Yeah. So I roll up a green dragon. The party sees a green dragon flying overhead. Now they know that there's a green dragon in the area, and they can maybe be like, hey, let's find his lair when we're like high enough level. That adds like a little bit of world flavor and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you see like some trolls like down the hill, like, they're like sitting in the swamp taking a bath. Like, it doesn't mean that you automatically have to fight these things. It just means that you encountered them, that you see them, and then maybe you're like hiding in the woods, like watching like an army go past because you rolled up like 50 pikemen. It's like,
there you go.
They're watching an army walk past, and that's like story fodder immediately.
Yeah, so that's Sam and Frodo. They encounter the Southern army. Yeah, the Southrons, right? Not the Easterlings, the Southrons. They encounter them. They're there as they won't go past. Well, and even if it's not seeing the dragon from afar, maybe it is. You stumble on the dragon when he's asleep. He wakes up, but he was asleep because he just ate an entire herd of cows. Yeah. He's not hungry. He'd rather tell riddles. He'd rather play with you a little bit. He'd rather give you a quest to go on and to see if you'll do it. Just because he's bored, why not? Like you said, it's not combat encounter. It's just encounter.
Well, and maybe the dragon, dragons can be greedy, obviously. So he's like, you're adventurers, huh? Okay, you go into deep, dark places and you find treasure. Huh, okay. I want you to work for me. You're going to find treasure for me. And I think Vic, you said this when this argument was going on. Like maybe the dragon knows your smell now too, so he knows what you smell like,
and
so he'll find you. He wants his dues now. You work for him now.
Yeah, he just shakes you down, and which is hilarious.
Yes, he shakes you down, takes the treasure you were taking home with you.
He just takes his cut. He's not too greedy. He knows that to keep you working for him, he'll need to give you at least something. But it's like he takes at least half, and you get to keep the other half.
I'll take the magic user's spell book. You've got your spells memorized, do you, young sir? Great. I'll take your spell book. You go in. I can't fit in that cave over there. There's a barrow over there. I can't fit in it. But I do know there's a golden chalice in there that I really want. You get that out. I'll give you your spell book back. You can keep anything else you find. I just want the chalice.
Yeah.
I
know you write that down.
Yeah.
Getting robbed by a dragon, that's something to talk about,
Held up by a dragon.
Well, the dragon might also know like all these like hidden dungeons and crypts and stuff that like nobody even has any idea about anymore. It's like, I was around here like 6,000 years ago. I remember this thing back then. It was like filled with gold. Go find it. I was around this area.
Might have an answer for the quest that the party is engaged in right then. You're looking for this thing. You can't see it from the ground, but I've flown over it, and you can see from the sky. It's I know where it is, and if you do this for me, I'll tell you.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity there. I think that this idea that random encounters have to be combat comes from a lot of people playing JRPGs, because you play Final Fantasy, you play these video games, your character's walking around the map, and then all of a sudden you get the little swirly effect, and it just immediately goes to combat. And I think that became, because those are random encounters, random combat encounters. They're called random encounters in those games. And so I think people's perceptions of what those random encounters are changed with people playing more and more of those games. And not that those are bad, those are fun games, but it's kind of warped people's perception, where I think at this point everyone just assumes, like you see with 5e people complaining about random encounters, oh, they're all just combat. And I'm just like, they don't have to be. They could be really rich, interesting role-playing encounters. They can be, that's the beauty of reaction roles too, and parlaying.
The reaction roll, or just the DM deciding, this particular monster at this particular time, I've got another idea, and I've done it with, I've rolled up a lycanthrope. It's gonna be, it's gonna be a lycanthrope of some kind. Okay, it's gonna be a werebear, and they're lawful. They're not out just to terrorize the group. What might he be able to tell them? What can this be other than hack and slash and try to fight a werebear, right?
I've been running Curse of Strahd, and I rolled a random encounter. There was like a single revenant. I was like, well, a single revenant. So the party's like level 8. They're gonna like beat the hell out of it like immediately. So instead of just like a random combat encounter, I made it like this immortal warrior who like was looking for somebody to finally beat him so he could be at rest. So he's like standing on the road with like his great sword, like facing them, and he challenged the party's fighter to like a duel. And they dueled, and he beat the fighter, but he let him live with like 1 HP, and he was like, "Yeah, once you're ready, like come and find me again, like like I need a worthy opponent." And now he's like an interesting, like flavorful NPC that they're like looking forward to meeting again, instead of just like one revenant that they just like beat in like a minute and then kept walking. So
it's far more interesting. There's a lot more complexity, and I don't know the 5e rule system, but I imagine there's nothing in those rules that say it has to be combat. It's just DMs, just assuming, random encounter, I guess we're gonna have to have a fight here, right? And sometimes the random encounter as a fight you do want, because your party's on your way somewhere, and that they're just that they're going to be powerful enough that this isn't going to be a huge challenge unless you grind them down a little bit. And getting there is part of the whole thing. So, if go back to Lord of the Rings, but if the Fellowship left Rivendell and they did fly the eagles there, they'd get there all fresh, Nobody's been tempted by the ring. Nobody's been beat up by orcs on the road. They're all ready, and then boom, it's done. The journey was 99% of the book, right? So a lot of that can happen, and it can be useful to have combat encounters along the way. So there's, but it's all good. It doesn't always have to be one or the other.
Yeah, I like encounters where it gives players motivation. Like in the current Rule Cyclopedia game, one of the first encounters they ever had, and I purposely structured it this way because I knew that this would happen. They ran into some bandits. They ran into some ruffians on the road. And these guys had just robbed some other merchant who was moving his home. So they had his covered wagon, and the family was tied up inside. And the player saw that, and being the heroes at level 1 that they were, they're like, let's take them on. They only saw, there was 3 of them. They saw 4 bandits, and they're like, let's go, let's take them on. So they go and start fighting, and then out of the wagon come 5 more bandits, and
right.
And the bandits beat them up pretty bad. And I purposely structured it this way as opposed to orcs or some kind of just bestial monster, because I just had them rob them, They just robbed them and said, you're on our turf, watch it. And they had their stuff taken. This is their first experience in combat. They head out. I think they got attacked 6 miles outside of town.
Oh man,
they got robbed 6 miles. They leave town. We're on an adventure, and then they get robbed 6 miles out of town. But it gave them motivation.
Adventure.
It gave them motivation though, because they came back into town penniless, and they're like, we need to raise an army. So they went and got the villagers had been under the boot of these bandits on the road for a while. So they riled up the villagers. They got I think they had 15 men from the village that wanted to take up pitchforks and arms with them, and we're tired of these guys, let's go get them. And they went back and cleared out the bandit barrow, or the bandit lair, and they took all the weapons from the bandits and gave them to the people in town, and we're like, now you guys can defend yourselves better, and it turned into this whole thing, and it started with them being robbed on a random encounter on the road.
You mentioned Lord of the Rings earlier, and I just started thinking about Lord of the Rings in D&D terms. It's their random encounter will sucked. Nazgul, why did that 5 miles out of Hobbiton or whatever it's called, and the Hobbit itself, those the 3 mountain trolls, which what would be at least hit dice 7 each, something like that. So there's some pretty bad random encounter rules.
I mean, and then there's the DM how do I get him out of this? We've just started. I can't kill the characters. Gandalf comes back. The NPC that I sent away, who's going to be gone for 6 sessions. I bring him back.
Yeah, the GMPC.
Well, the neat thing about it is it's that intersection between game and storytelling, right? Because there was a whole big furious debate online about role-playing games, whoever. But anyway, whether it was a game or if it was a storytelling thing, there's games that call the GM the storyteller. I think doesn't Vampire call it the storyteller?
I can't call it no. Is it narrator or something?
Narrator, similar to storyteller. Anyway, but that they both obtain, right? I mean, if it was just a game, you'd sit down and roll dice, and the DM wouldn't bother to describe who you're fighting or talk about a dungeon or anything else. You just roll dice, and the DM would say, "Oh, you win. You get this many points." Right? But neither is it pure storytelling, because you don't just narrate your way out of it. That's part of it, but then you also have to roll the dice. And even as you narrate your way out, you're narrating your way out based on a character that you rolled up randomly with dice. And so there's this intersection of of narrative and game, where the two push each other. And so the random encounter that happens that goes any which way, the dragon sending them on the quest, the bandits, the sort of revenge and giving the town the ability to protect itself, all those things. The back and forth between game and story shapes something totally different. It's not just you telling a story to your friends, or even your friends and you making a story up together, because there's an element in it that you can't control. But it's not just rolling dice either. You're doing both things, and they toss back and forth, and they become something different, something that is a unique cultural artifact, right? Because we've been telling stories since we could speak, since humans developed languages. We've been telling each other stories. And we've been playing games ever since we could carve little, dice or whatever out of bone. But to do both of them in this combined way, and I was thinking about this the other day. Even something as old as chess tells a story, right? It's the story of a battle. There's a king, and then the queen, and the knights, and and I don't know why the bishops are there on the field of battle. Well, I guess they led troops back then too. And all there's a little miniature story there, but it's less, obviously, it's much, much less involved. But you get to tell this story of chance, and you get to play this game of a narrative that becomes a whole other art form. And the really good ones, where it's, this is where people talk about, oh yeah, the DM just wants to be he's a failed actor, theater kid, right? But I was an actor, and this is where it's like live theater. It's not like a movie, because in a movie, if you really like a scene, you can rewind and watch it again. You could put the movie in a second time. But live theater, even though you're following the same script, it happens new every time you do it. Right? Every audience is a bit different. Every night is a bit different. The timing is a little different. The inflection of the voice is a bit different. The audience laughs longer. They gasp at a different spot. And so every time is a unique thing. And so you create this artwork which only lives while you're doing it. And if you go on YouTube and you do recaps, then you're creating a secondary artwork based on the first, but you're not redoing it. It's still ephemeral. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I on the whole like storyteller versus whatever. Like I'm very much like a seat of the pants DM. I don't put much. My prep, I've talked about it going into it these days, and it's mostly because I have my daughter. I don't have a lot of free time, and I'm writing my own games and making videos, and like I just don't have a lot of time to actually prep for game night. Yeah. So I just sort of just was like, I'm going to make it up as I go along. AD&D and a lot of these older editions have really fantastic tables in them that they act as prompts. So like I've really leaned into the seat of the pants kind of game.
Yeah.
Using the dice and the tables and these things as prompts in order to make stuff up on the fly. And my players honestly can't tell the difference at this point. But but it's like an immersion story. It's different than like I'm going to write a story, and because people hear me talk sometimes and they think I'm opposed to story. I'm opposed to like I'm going to go in with this preconceived thing and like foist it on the players. You're going to live my novel whether you like it or not. Like I don't do that. But I go in with like a world. I'll do like here's a map. You guys start here. There's maybe you hear of a dungeon over here, and this baron over here is feuding with this lord over here. Right. And the players kind of go off. Random encounters in the wilderness happen. I use a lot of the appendices in AD&D first edition because they're just like really good for that. What I'm trying to do, like seat of the pants stuff, and Scarlet Heroes as well. It's a really good game. And it's been really fun to see like this stuff that just sort of, it's still a story, but I didn't plan it. It just, it spontaneously happened at the table.
You brought elements to the table, but because so you're talking about totally seat of the pants, but sometimes you prepare a dungeon and everything else,
Mhm.
but you don't prepare how they go through it, what order they go in, the outcomes of the battles, that all, you know.
Yeah.
It's actually in the basic book. I think it's Menser who writes it. You're going to tell a story, but you won't tell it alone. You'll tell it with other people, and that to me informs it that it's storytelling, but it's not the DM telling the story. Like you say, you're gonna play my novel, right? It's not that, because you're telling it together, and the dice are also there telling part of the story. You know, they're saying, "Oh no, you didn't hit," right? You know, or "Oh yeah, you died of poison," right? So you're telling it in a cooperative way with this random element of chance. Tale of the Manticore does a really fabulous job of this. He does a solo. He plays the game for the sake of the story. So he plays the game, and then he does a narrative podcast out of it, and he gets people acting in some of the roles, you know, doing voices and stuff, the characters. And it's very dark and very serious, and it's fabulous. But there's an element of chance always in it, and he's very upfront about when in the narrative is, you know, this is going to be complete random chance. The dice will decide what's happening. It's a neat. I love the sort of collaborative bit, you know, where the DM may have ideas, but they're just ideas.
My prep is a good amount of scotch, and then having watched way too many movies and read way too many books that I can steal stuff from that my players don't know, so they think I'm like really creative and interesting. And it's like, no, I just literally read this in a book 2 days ago, and I thought it was cool. So,
you know, that's an important part of improvisation, and I think it's actually something lost on a lot of modern GMs is having a lot of good media that's outside of the hobby under your belt from which you can draw upon. You know, reading, I love reading pulp novels. I still love reading Appendix N stuff. You know, I think that stuff's incredibly useful. You read the Sword Trilogy by Michael Moorcock, or you read the Elric Saga, and you understand how alignment works, you know.
Right. Three Hearts and Three Lions, big for alignment.
Yes. Or you read a Conan story, and you're like, this is just, you know, Tower of the Elephant. This is just a dungeon crawl through a wizard tower, you know. It's a play report of it. One of the players died. He got bit by the spider. Didn't make his save versus poison, and he died. You know, so having that good underpinning of like good media that you've consumed is very useful for even if you're not like me, you're not running zero prep, low prep games where you're just like, whoa, let's see what happens today. Even if you are planning more than that, it still is very beneficial to have that stuff.
It is. And it can go somewhere in between. I think the last 4 or 5 sessions that I played with my family, they were about 25% planned. Like I had some points. I knew this was going to happen, that was going to happen, but or I knew that this was a goal because I didn't know what was going to happen. But I had, you know, they were going to hear about this thing, and you know, if they go after it, this is what they're going to find. But then I had no idea how to get there. I had no thought about what they'd meet along the way, and I just came up with it on the fly. Some of it from random rolls, some of it just saying, I think this should be where there's a village. There's going to be a village of people, and they don't speak the language. The only language they have in common, because the elves know Goblin, and these people live close enough to the goblins that they're being held hostage. Their village is paying tribute to the goblins. They're a vassal, you know, village of the goblins. Yeah, that they'll have to figure out that Goblin is the only language they have in common. And I just decided to do it. Like, I'll do that, you know. And it's fun that way. It's fun because there's a lot of spontaneity in it, and you can react to what the players are doing. You can I didn't spend all night prepping this dungeon, and then they decide not to go in it. You know.
So Brian James says, "Oh, so Vic is on the zero prep site." Sort of, I guess, but I'm not doing it because it's some philosophy that I really believe in. One, I'm just lazy. Two, my creative energy is very limited. So like I need it to run the game. If I'm like writing like NPCs and like this whole plot and stuff beforehand, then my creative energy is already spent by the time I actually get to run the game. I don't even like write my books on the same day that I'm running a game. Like if I'm running a game, I'm not doing anything that day that will just spend that energy. I don't know, maybe I'm just weird like that. But yeah, like, so I just don't do zero prep because of those reasons, and not because it's some philosophy that I really believe in. Like, if I could, I'm sure I would have like a whole binder of like NPCs and like plot ideas and all that stuff. But I don't know.
Vic zero preps modules. So
yeah.
Modules, excellent.
Yeah, I don't read modules beforehand. I read them as I run them.
So sometimes, though, the more prep you put in, the more attached you get to a specific outcome, the more likely you are to railroad your players. Now, not always. There's all the other side of the coin is knowing the adventure, and I have to say, the players have some responsibility to the game, to each other, and to the DM to say, clearly the DM has spent a long time on this adventure. Let's not just blow off the mysterious caverns where there's legends of treasure.
Yeah.
Clearly, if we go that way, there's a well-crafted adventure waiting for us. If we go this way, he's just going to start rolling dice. So, I think it's like if you go over to someone's house and they have cooked you a meal and you say, I feel like ordering pizza. Like,
my sister does that.
But you can get one or two things can happen if you really, really prepare in depth. You can get so wedded to an idea of how it happens that you railroad, or you know it so well that you're comfortable with whatever happens because you know it so well. Oh, you went that way? I know what's down there. I know how things will shape out. If you take that out instead of this, I know what's going to happen because you know it inside out,
Yeah.
Well, if I know the players are going somewhere specific, I might like get like a map from Google that fits what they're doing, like a dungeon or something, or like a forest. And then I might like make little tokens if there's like custom monsters and stuff. But that's the most I'll do. And then I actually use the map as like I use battle maps a lot, and I actually use that as a guide for like my narrative and my description. So if there's like a log on the map, I might make something up about that log on the spot when they like run into it. It's like, oh, there's like a weird glowing mushroom on it, and then one of them decides to eat it, and now they, like I don't know, now they've got weird magical powers for a little bit, like just stuff like that.
Glowing mushroom.
Yeah, well, but so like so it's just like, oh, this is a cool forest map, and I just see all these little elements that I can just use to like make stuff up on the fly.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll say too, and I've kind of wanted to make a video on this topic, and I still might, is that I talk a lot about zero prep and low prep stuff, and I want to point out to people that there's a reason why I also talk about solo gaming a lot, because solo gaming teaches you how to do zero prep by the seat of the pants gaming, because you're DMing yourself, so you have to rely on tables so that you're not metagaming, you can still ref yourself, but you're still surprised by the results every time. Right. And so once you learn how to do that, then you can bring it to the table with players. And one thing I've realized too is like, it's with any style of game that you want to run, is that this hobby takes work. It takes dedication. It's not like you can just show up and you're going to run this killer game. Like, even if you do zero prep, there's still years in the past of running games, of failing at games, of doing this stuff. So zero prep really isn't even zero prep, because you could count those previous games, those previous experiences as prep towards all the future stuff.
Absolutely.
But like, it's no matter what your gaming style is, you're gonna have to practice it. And I think a lot of people, I think it's just a product of our time, and they just want that quick, like, give it to me now. I want to be good at this now,
Well, yeah, there's the fun of the play, of playing the game, of the around the table. That's a different kind of fun, although it's attached to the sort of obsessive nerd fun of either planning everything out, and you've got a map of their village, and you know what the cobbler's wife's name is, right? And what village she came from. There's that level of nerddom, and there's also the level of nerddom of knowing every rule and every iteration of every dice roll that might come up, so that you can do seat of your pants. You don't know the product, but you know your tools cold, you know. And that's a different enjoyment than playing, and I think it's the divide between the player and the DM, right? Because some people, they want to show up and they want to enjoy the game. You know, they don't want to pore over the map all night, and they don't want to know who the cobbler's wife is. They just want to play the game. They're players, and God bless them, because if we didn't have them, the DMs would be just doing a bunch of solo missions on their own, right?
Yeah, I really love solo gaming though. Like, I solo game all the time. Like, I'd rather solo game than play a video game sometimes. So,
but Pete, I learned the cheat codes for video games, so I would not solo game very well. I would just be like, I think I'm going to look for secret doors there again. Oh, I found one.
I tried solo gaming, and again, maybe I'm just really lazy, but like, so, you know, I enjoyed the hex crawling and stuff like that. But then I one of the encounters was like, oh, there's like a dungeon here, and then I was like, I have to like generate a dungeon now. And I was like sitting there, I was like, I wonder what's going on Twitter. And I just like, so.
No, solo gaming is not for everyone. I've just come to really enjoy it, because I'm a forever GM too. You know, I have a player who is like, I'll run a game at some point, but he started a new job and all that kind of stuff. So he's probably not going to be able to run a game for a while. So right. it's just like, for me, it's been a nice way of interacting with the hobby that I love in a way that's different than just me always running games for other people and for myself. Obviously, I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy doing it for myself.
Oh, yeah.
But I've also learned that like anything I do solo gaming is instantly, because I solo game in Scarlet Heroes or in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, because it just has so much good stuff in it for that. And anything that I make in my solo game, it's like, this is easy just to plop into the game at the table. You know, I can incorporate what I made here. It's immediately gameable with a group of players. You know,
you've road tested it.
Yeah, essentially. And I don't know. It's a good way for me to like really sharpen myself on the rules, because I've always been seeking rules mastery. I want to be able to be that GM that has like that encyclopedic knowledge of, well, the grappling rules in AD&D 1E work like this, you know? Right. and so like for me, solo gaming is a good way of doing that, because then when I don't know a rule, it's like, well, I'm only holding myself up to go and look it up in the book, you know? So I can sit and like, there's this special instance where I don't know this rule, and it's okay for me to spend 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, however long it takes, 5 minutes to sit there and look at what that rule is, and then be like, oh, cool, now I know what it is. Right. So I've just gained a lot of value from that in that way. But yeah, solo gaming's not for everyone. Not everyone is going to enjoy it. So
yeah, I didn't. The only solo gaming I ever did, other than of course the initial adventure in BECMI, I had they had some solo modules back in the day, and I had the Mystery of the Snow Pearls. Is it? I got a little way into it, but there wasn't the excitement. And I think for me is because I really do like being the DM. I like preparing the surprise. I like laying the trap. I like that obsessive detail. I don't have as much time for it as I did when I was a teenager, of course, because teenagers have all the time in the world. My eldest who plays Fleetwood in our game, you're like, well, you could do this and you could that. You're so far behind on your Dungeon 23. It's like, that's because I'm an adult. I have to do stuff, But I like all that stuff. So the solo gaming never grabbed me for that, because, as you say, you couldn't do prep, otherwise you'd know what was going on and you metagame your way through it. So I never even finished the Mystery of the Snow Pearls. I don't think. It was a long time ago. It was 1980s. But
I just like presenting situations and then seeing how somebody else solves them. And if I have to solve them myself, I don't know, that just takes something away from it for me. Maybe I guess I just like that collaboration, out of it. But yeah, I like having like, a combat encounter or something, and then like watching the players like getting all tactical about it or something like that, or or even just rushing in and horribly dying. But it's fun to see what they do.
Their only tactic is to charge in and get themselves killed.
Yeah.
I was because I've been playing solo gaming a lot in the One Ring 2nd edition. I've been really enjoying that game, and I was solo gaming, and it was just fun. This is like a little example of how I would do it. I'm using Strider mode, which has extra stuff that's not in the core rulebook that allows you to solo game. So it has more random tables that add like descriptions to things, or it has like the Oracle, which you can ask yes or no questions of, and then you can choose like how likely you think it would be. Oh, it would be middling. So like I have a 50-50 chance of this being yes or no. It's very likely it's going to be like 75 to 80%, So like I was running a solo gaming, but with a group of characters. I did like my own little ranger, elf, dwarf, little fellowship, kind of like Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. And they came across like a troll cave, some stone trolls. And they caught the stone trolls by surprise, so they're like creeping in. They're like, well, "There's going to be treasure in this troll cave," So I'm like, okay, they would creep in. They have surprise, so the trolls. It was during the day, so the sun's out. The trolls are sleeping, and then I was like, I want. There's loot in here. There's going to be treasure in here. So I asked the Oracle a yes or no question, and I think I said it as unlikely, but I asked it like, if I were to search in this treasure, would there be like a mirror in here? And it was like, yes. So it's like, cool, there's a mirror in here. We wake up, have the archers wake up the trolls. The trolls would obviously, they shoot them with arrows. The trolls would obviously run.
Wake up the trolls.
with pointy barbed arrows.
Yeah.
There's 2 trolls. They were asleep. They run towards the party. And then the dwarf was there with the mirror, and he used the sun to reflect it onto the stone trolls, turning them to stone. And I was like, that it was all made up spontaneously. Like I didn't plan any of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me, it was still fun, but again, it's not going to be for everyone. I think the Oracle helps a lot though. The yes or no Oracle helps with the solo gaming a lot. It adds that extra element of like being able to ref yourself.
Yeah. Well, that sounds awesome, but to me the fun part is like just me like maybe hinting that there's like a mirror among the treasure, just mentioning it in passing, and then the smart players will pick up on that, and that's awesome. The dumb players are like, "Oh, a mirror, cool," and then they get hit by trolls.
I look at myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just thinking that because but it's just like backwards, I guess, because it's like I was being that smart player, like, well, stone trolls don't like sunlight; they turn to stone. There's treasure hoard here. Is there a mirror or reflective surface in here? You'd ask that question of the referee of the lore master in the One Ring, like, is there anything reflective in here that I could see? And the lore master would answer yes or no.
Right.
So. I haven't heard anyone talk about Dungeon 23 since maybe mid-January. I was advocating for Hex 23, and I gave up on that because, like you, I'm an adult. So I was going to try and make like a giant hex map for the whole year, and I gave up because it was.
Yeah, I did. I think I did like 2.
Yeah.
I have the dungeon mapped out till the end of June, and I've got into early June described. At one point I was so far behind, I said I just have to draw out the entire level at once, which totally breaks the point of it, but I thought I would catch up, and so I mapped it out to the end of June, and then I was gonna we were at the end of June, there early July, and then I was gonna write all of the contents of the rooms and then catch up with myself, and then I stalled out again, and I went on vacation, and I thought, I'll have all this time, I'll be able to catch up on Dungeon 23. I'll be able to get the monster manual book that the boys they're drawing. They like to do this. They draw pictures of a monster and then they give it to me, and I have to come up with stats for it. And so they said we should put these together into a book. Yeah, we'll make a book out of it. I thought I'd have all this time to do that. I just sat in my chair and read John le Carre books for a month. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Hey, you got to recharge sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now my my adventures are all full of double crossing and spying, cynicism about the state of the world. Oh, John le Carre.
Nothing wrong with that. I like some good spy stories.
Yeah. See, there's no one better. Ian Fleming did the action spies, but in terms of like actual the way the world really works. Although I have to say, after reading I don't know how many of his books in a row, I was so needing something positive. Like, just give me a story where there's a happy ending, and the hero doesn't betray his own moral character or something because it was so bleak. I love le Carre, but good heavens.
Yeah, that's it's like binge watching shows or something like that, where it's like, I think I need a break. It's doing something in my brain.
Well, I got to tell you, I was after le Carre, I started listening to the memoirs of German soldiers from World War II, narrated by an AI bot. Some guy uploads these videos. It's World War II Stories channel on YouTube, and he has this AI bot read them. The AI bot is set to a British man, so it's a British voice talking of German perspective. But I was listening to them over and over and over every day, listening to these stories, and I knew I needed to stop when when I thought, yeah, the Waffen SS weren't that bad. Stop listening to that perspective.
You're like the Canadian Parliament.
Oh no.
Like, okay. Someone, you were fighting the Russians in Ukraine in the 40s.
Yeah.
Who was there? My people. I'm not my people. I grew up in the U.S., so I'm an immigrant here, but that just means I chose to be here. Oh, well.
Yeah. I know some. I mean, you're one of them. I know of quite a few very nice Canadians. So
we have that reputation. It's like Minnesota nice on steroids.
I have some questions for you here, I guess. Diversity and Dragons asks, what's your favorite Fleming Bond novel?
You know what? I've never read a Fleming Bond novel. I really haven't. I know Fleming by reputation, and of course the movies. And I've actually seen very few Bond movies all the way through. When I was a little kid, my parents, or my father and my stepmother, were watching Live or Let Die. It was on TV. Back in the day when it came on, you had to watch it then because that was when it was on.
Yeah.
There wasn't a VCR. You couldn't stream it anytime. Anyway, they were watching that, and I was 6, I want to say, and I could hear the theme song, and Live or Let Die really bothered me. Like, it really got under my skin and bothered me, the callousness of that statement, which, I mean, in the context of a Bond film, yeah. But that phrase bothered me so much that I actually had a real problem with watching Bond for a long way into my teens. But it's like I ate spaghetti one night when I was 4 or 5, and then I threw up, and I didn't eat spaghetti again for 10 years. Blamed the spaghetti. But I've watched some of the movies. I probably know more spy movie stuff from Austin Powers really than James Bond. I've watched enough Bond to know Bond, but no, I never read any Fleming.
And then I meant to get to this question earlier, but then we moved past it. But Crafty wanted to know what denomination. So this was like the first question.
Anglican. So if you're in the U.S., it'd be Episcopalian.
Okay.
Yeah, and it came down to I was actually an atheist, and I moved in across the street from the Episcopal Cathedral. I didn't know what Episcopalians were, but I wanted to go see the inside of their church because I like architecture. So I went one Sunday morning, and I didn't believe anything they said, But I thought, beautiful church, and I went back next Sunday for some reason. So watch out for the things you get curious about that can lead you on.
Yeah.
Once you go out your door, Frodo, my lad.
I guess, like, if we have time and if you're willing to talk about it too, I'm curious because did you had your box set you played when you were a kid? I didn't know that you were an atheist. Did you ever have to deal with like Satanic Panic when you were a kid?
No. I didn't actually even hear about Satanic Panic until I was well into high school. So I got the book. I got the first box set. I think I got it in '83, maybe early '84. Well, it would have been late '83, or because both my birthday and of course Christmas are at the end of the year, so it was later in the year. Maybe I got it in '83. And I did the solo adventure, and I named the fighter Kang or something weird like that. And then I played briefly with a group of older kids in the neighborhood, but I was very much a little kid playing with older kids. And then it sat fallow until I was a teenager. And when I heard about the Satanic Panic, it was either late high school or even early university, when the whole playing records backward thing. Remember that? You get satanic lyrics. And then the joke, what do you get if you play country music backwards? You get your truck back, your dog back, your girlfriend back. Anyway, so that was the context I heard it in. Satanic Panic for me was a music thing. It was Tipper Gore making sure that there was a explicit lyrics label on albums, on CDs, which were new. So it wasn't really a thing for me. And I had a very, very, very churchy grandma.
Okay.
My grandmother on my mother's side was very churchy. Wisconsin Synod Lutheran, dyed in the wool. But she also read Tolkien and Lewis and understood that Tolkien and Lewis wrote fantasy from a deeply Christian place. That their fantasy is imbued with not so much allegory, but with the sensibility, the ethos, So even though they were both channeling Norse mythology in different ways, actually more Tolkien than Lewis, still and all their ethos is unmistakably Christian. So she understood that fantasy didn't mean that if you read about goblins, it didn't mean you wanted to serve goblins or be a goblin, right? That if you read about evil, didn't mean you were evil. So she got that. So the churchiest person in my life got that. And I think when I first found D&D, I was functionally an atheist, but if someone would have asked, I would have said, yeah, I believe in God. But we had no church. We didn't go to church at all. So there was no influence from that direction at all. And my family was just never, even the most religious person in my family was never that hung up on it. Never didn't see D&D as a problem. Legitimate evil, yes, like legitimate things that are evil and really quite of Satan, racism and violence and all that my grandmother was very much against. But pretending you're a wizard, go for it, kid.
Yeah, Go ahead.
I only know it from it about it through pop culture, because it wasn't really a thing in the Netherlands, at least in my experience. So it was just like, oh, that one weird Tom Hanks movie where he is getting sucked into that game, and all that stuff. Some TV show would have a plot line about oh, the kid's playing D&D. Oh, he believes in black magic. So that's that was my what's the word? I can't think of the word, but yeah.
See, I grew up early 90s, so Satanic Panic was still coming off, but I grew up in a very charismatic evangelical church, and so I wasn't allowed to watch Ninja Turtles. It was weird.
The Satanic Ninja Turtles.
Well, it was evil. It was evil because they lived in the sewer. I didn't understand the explanation. I wasn't allowed.
You don't want your kid to grow up to live in a sewer. I get that. I mean,
I don't. They obviously never watched a lot of the things they said you weren't allowed to watch. They never actually vetted it. My parents still, weirdly enough, let me like certain things. Like I could like Batman, even though I'd be in Sunday school. I was obsessed with Batman, and I'd like draw pictures of Batman on my Sunday school thing.
He's Episcopalian, so.
Oh well, they didn't like it, so they said Batman was evil, and I was like, but he fights bad guys. Like how, you know. I'm like, 5 years old arguing with a Sunday school teacher. And my parents eventually apologized later when we were older. They were like, sorry, we did that to you guys.
Yeah.
Your
daughter's 3.5. You already know there's a list of things that you're going to apologize for someday, right?
Yeah.
Like we mess up our children in all sorts of ways because we're human. Right? You just have like, why did I do that to my kid? Why did I say that? Why did I? Yeah.
So growing up, I did know a lot of kids that weren't allowed to like watch like violent cartoons and stuff like that. But that was never from like a religious standpoint. It was because the parents were just like old hippies, basically, that never like grew out of like that stuff, and they like all believed in like peace and love and like all that stuff. And it's like, they weren't allowed to even play with like toy guns or like have like I remember the mom of one of my friends, whenever we had like sticks, we were like playing sword fighting, she would like tell us to stop, that kind of stuff. So but yeah, that was all because they were just like old hippies, like I said. So
yeah. Well, you look at the cartoons and they are. I mean, Bugs Bunny is incredibly violent. Yosemite Sam is constantly shooting at him. So is Elmer Fudd and the Wile E. Coyote and explosions and the Smurfs. I mean, your neighbors there in Belgium. I mean, coming out with the Smurfs, they're constantly hitting each other. But somehow we grew up without thinking that I could actually. I grew up not thinking I could drop an anvil on someone's head. I kind of understood that it was a cartoon. Oh well. Yeah. No, it's God bless him. You got to look at him and say, as a parent, I have a certain sympathy, because as soon as you have a kid, 99% of your heart leaves your body, and you're fearless before that. I don't care what happens. It's just me, And then you get married, and you're kind of concerned for your spouse and everything. And you want to help protect them, but still, in all, she could do better than me anyway, so she'll get married. She'll marry someone else if I die, But then you have kids, and the entire world is knives and fire and broken glass and speeding cars, and you just want nothing more than to keep them safe. And so I get that impulse. That if you truly believe the game was evil. Right? If you truly believed it was evil, then you do everything in your power to keep your most cherished loved ones from being harmed by it. So, the impulse, it's just, honestly, you really think that the game is going to do that? You really think the game is going to convey all that?
Well, the funny thing is that all those kids that weren't allowed to do anything, like some of them couldn't even have sugar. Like when the parents weren't around, they were like the biggest menace. They were like horrible sometimes. And it's
they were
like,
jonesing for it.
Yeah. No, but like they pulled all sorts of like shenanigans. Like they were like just like pulling horrible pranks on people and like all sorts of stuff. And like whenever the parents were around, they were like little angels that never did anything wrong. But yeah,
that's the PK, right? The preacher's kid.
Yeah.
Like I wonder what my boys get up to when they're not in front of the church group.
Yeah.
So interestingly, of course, the Satanic Panic came back in a small way, in a reaction against the Harry Potter books.
Yeah.
You remember when like people were demanding it's witchcraft, it has to be taken out of the library. You think, wait till the 7th book. He sacrificially offers himself to be killed, and then he goes to King's Cross Station.
Yeah.
Where he then resurrects and defeats evil.
Yeah.
maybe a little Christian allegory going on there. It's like you spent how many years railing against something, and it turns out actually to be Christian allegory.
Yeah.
I think that was I can't believe I'm his name escaped me. Comedian Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald, yeah, because he critiqued someone when they were doing like a stand-up thing, and they were talking about like someone was speaking the Bible at him, and he's like, "Well, I have Harry Potter," and he's like, that's his critique of the stand-up bit was like, that's it's actually a lot more like the Bible than you probably think.
Yeah.
Yeah, this sort of profoundly so. Oh well, but again,
I do remember that because I remember I think I was in. When did the first Harry Potter book come out? I don't even know. It was like late 90s, right? So I was probably late junior high at that point. That's how young I am. And I remember seeing that. I remember seeing that in the Scholastic Book Fair and being like, I want that. Mom, what's that? And it's like still going through that thing, like you can't look, don't even look at that. Get away from that.
Yeah. You just made me feel extraordinarily old, by the way.
Sorry.
Scholastic Book Fair. I'm like, yeah, the Scholastic books. They had like the Bobbsey twins and the Hardy Boys. Harry Potter. Although I'm glad that it was still going strong when Harry Potter came out. That's good to hear.
But I mean, I'm 36 and I start feeling old when I start to talking to younger people. So I used to work with someone and he was like, oh, I was born in 1998. It was like at my old job. And I'm like, oh, that was the year the movie Rush Hour came out. I remember I really liked that movie. And you're as old as the movie Rush Hour. I feel old now. I feel old.
Yeah. So. I was already in high school like them.
Well, yeah, I think of the Star Wars prequels as being relatively recent.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I remember when they first came out too.
Oh well.
Yeah.
That's okay. We're getting sort of towards the end here. I know I wanted to give you a moment too to talk about you running a con. I didn't know that till just before we were talking on stream, but I want to make sure you have plenty of time to talk about the convention that you're going to be running.
Thank you very much. It's called Clericon. That was named by viewers of mine on a live stream. But obviously Clericon. And it's happening November 3rd through 5th in the sleepy little town of Glen Williams, which is just west of Toronto. And it is going to be a 3-day, that's the 3rd to the 5th. We're starting the sort of evening of the 5th, starting out with a big feast dinner, and then we've got gaming tables for that evening and all Saturday and into Sunday. And we've got some other fun stuff, things that pertain to to my own channel, to my recaps and the game we play. So I've got a character who always likes to eat onions. Whenever I have goblins or orcs, I put onions in, and Bob Johnny always grabs an onion and eats it. So there's the Bob Johnny onion eating contest, and we've got a panel group. We got a panel that of Mage's Musings and The Tale of the Manticore and Bandit's Keep is coming up.
Cool.
And yeah, we're gonna and they're all coming. They're gonna run games as well, and they're gonna be part of the panel discussion. And we've got a local game maker is bringing. They're bringing their latest. They made the Math Magician game, which is pretty cool. But they've got a new one that's in development, and lots of cool stuff. We're gonna have a consignment table. So if you've got 3 copies of the DMG or 2 copies of Deities and Demigods, and you want to unload one of them, that kind of stuff. Old terrain, old minis, whatever. All sorts of stuff going on. And the registration is it's a website called RSVPify. But I gather that you put the link in the description. Thank you.
It's in chat too.
And the chat too. Fabulous. So that is, it's happening in November. There is a registration fee for it because I have to, even though it's happening in my own parish's parish hall, I still have to rent it like anyone else. So to cover the rental and things like that. And it's going to be fun. And we even have like a real convention. We have badges.
Oh, look at that.
So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So looking forward to that. Yeah, that's the big project on the horizon. And all the boys are planning to be there. And at least my oldest and youngest are they want to run games.
Oh, good
my
for them.
youngest has developed a D2 system, which is really just him telling stories and then having you flip a coin every once in a while.
Oh, he stole Vic's idea.
Yeah. and then my eldest is running a Simple Sixes game that James Keck wrote, Simple Sixes system set in World War II. That's going to be fun. All sorts of cool stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I was working on the coin flip game too, just for shits and giggles. Yeah, I was going to call it Spare Change. And,
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, this one actually started out. I suggested the coin. It started out with the plate pieces from Lego, the flat. It started out with flipping one of those. It was, studs up, studs down kind of thing. And I suggested that maybe there was a weight differential that favored one, result over the other. That maybe we should go with something a little more impartial.
Yeah. Now, mine was going to be a coin pool game, so you needed like multiple coins, and then the higher you scale, the more coins you could flip, and the more chance you had to to get the result you needed. So.
Right. I don't know that he's gone to that. He is 8, so I don't think he's gone to that level of complexity. But it'll probably be more in the that's adorable category than in the this is an awesome game.
Well, so are my games. So not that good.
He's so adorable.
Yeah. People just give me head pats like, "Good job, Vic."
Well done.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I would love to go, but I don't think I could. But I encourage everyone, if you're able to go, check it out, sign up. And Clericon is that's a great name for the con too. People are already coming.
I thought it worked out pretty well. Yeah. So if you're in the GTA, we do have there's a con pass for all 3 days. But there's also a day rate. Saturday would probably be the best day because it's the fullest. But there's a day rate as well. You can just come in for one day. And if you're close enough in the U.S., though, there's one fellow in the UK who's trying to make it happen. And if he shows up, he's going to. I'm pretty sure he's going to get the mileage award. Going to get the mileage prize. But yeah, so if you're anywhere in our area, do come and check us out.
I'm just
I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, people are asking when are we doing BasicCon?
Yeah, I was about to say I'm waiting for BasicCon, so I actually have an excuse to show up.
I got to work on it, and I probably when this Kickstarter is good, well, and over, and I can then give myself more gray hair with another project.
Yeah.
It will.
And he votes for Coeur d'Alene, but that's really far from me. So that's like an 8-hour drive for me.
Still in the same state.
Yeah.
You Americans and your giant country.
Yeah. Idaho's probably as big as your whole country, I bet.
I think I looked it up once. It was 5.5 times bigger or something like that.
Oh wow, yeah.
Well, I'm in Ontario, so I think Ontario is the size of Europe.
Yeah. You guys have forests that are bigger than the Netherlands. And then people go hiking in them and then they wonder why they disappear.
Definitely skinwalkers in those forests. That's why.
To put it in perspective, I looked up the size of the Shire recently because I was curious and I was watching The Hobbit. The Shire is bigger than the Netherlands. So
wow. but the people are considerably shorter.
Yeah, that is true. So they have more space.
Yeah, I love talking to Brits, especially. They'd be like, "Oh, yes, it's very far away." Oh, well, how far? Because I've been to England twice, and some of them. Oh, we're gonna go for a day trip to Canterbury. Oh, that is very far to go. It's an hour by train.
Yeah.
That's like an average commute one way here. No problem.
Meanwhile,
when I visited friends in the US, we would sometimes drive for 40 minutes just to get fast food. And I'm meanwhile, if I drive 40 minutes, that's a trip to visit far away family.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that is probably a healthier perspective and way to live. I don't think it's tenable, the world we've constructed on this side of the pond, but oh well.
Yeah. But Vic, do you have anything that you want to tell people about, or?
Tomorrow, Tuesday, with Crossface, Greg will probably be one shots. Watch that, my Tuesday stream. Otherwise just check out Modern Necessities, check out Modern Adventurer's Guide to Guns and Gear if you like firearms and like modern equipment for D&D. One's for 5th edition, the other one's for Old School Essentials, so BX, anything OSR. I'm actually working on a updated version of that BX one, also writing like cyberpunk rules and stuff for it. Keep an eye out for that, and that's it really.
Yeah, and I got nothing else other than check out Macuahuitl.
If you know anyone, incidentally, in this area that knows that I know you're just coming out with it, right? But if you know anyone around here who knows it, who could run it at the con, then you might get some sales.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'll have to see. I interacted with people on this hobby online. Obviously, like you get to know people all over the world. So maybe I know someone else.
They may be listening right now.
Yeah.
They had a con. Was it Big Geek Emporium? They had a con. Or Big Geek, and Ironcaster showed me a picture. They had a raffle, and my book was in the raffle. My 5e book was in the raffle, so I thought that was pretty cool.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Check out Macuahuitl. It's already at 13,000. I'm already 130% funded on Kickstarter, which just like blows my mind. So I'm excited. I hope the game delivers on people's expectations of being Eagle and Jaguar warriors, but we'll see. So
that's awesome.
I think we'll start winding it down here. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us, and that was a fun conversation. I hope people out there enjoyed it. Yeah, no problem. Anytime you ever want to come back on, if you want to talk about something or anything like that, you're more than welcome to come back anytime you wish. So we always stream Monday nights. So
excellent.
But so everyone else out there watching, sign up for Clericon if you can go. If you are in the area and you want to run Macuahuitl there, let me know. I'll send you the PDF. Or I could send you the PDF if you want to see it.
I would love to see it. I actually would absolutely love to see it. I know that I don't have enough between my ears to absorb a new game and run it between now and beginning of November, though. But I'd love to see it anyway.
Sign up for Clericon, check out Vic's books, and check out Macuahuitl. But again, thank you for coming on, and I hope everyone else has a good rest of their week.
Thank you.
Bye everyone. Dag iedereen.